Hello, this is Dr. Eric Bricker, and thank you for watching AHealthcareZ. Today's topic is healthcare is slow to change. Now, why is that? Why is healthcare so slow to change? When we say healthcare is slow to change, what we really mean is that healthcare organizations are slow to change. And healthcare organizations are just made up of people. And so what we're really saying is people in healthcare are slow to change. And by that I mean the people in power at these organizations, which are the people at hospitals, the people at health insurance carriers, the people within the government, the people within employers that are making healthcare budgetary and benefit decisions. They're all slow to change. So, again, the question is, why? Well, I went back and I looked at research around organizational change, and guess what I found? Very little has changed when it comes to change. This is not a new problem. Having people and organizations change has been a problem, or a challenge, I should say, probably for forever. In fact, there's a fantastic article from the Harvard Business Review from 1969 that describes the challenges of changing large organizations and corporations, and it might as well have been written yesterday. I mean, obviously the style of the English is a little different back in 1969. They kind of wrote more formally back then, but otherwise it could have been written yesterday. And they said that, look, the issue with the resistance to change is social. It has to do with the change in established relationships among people. Change is about the people and their relationships. This article in the Harvard Business Review goes on to talk about in great detail. Okay, so fine, that's one source. Specifically when it comes to healthcare, there was a fantastic article from Health Affairs that specifically looked at how the resistance to change within healthcare is really a manifestation of behavioral economics. Again, we don't consciously say, oh, I'm making a behavioral economic decision here, but the point is that it is oftentimes the subconscious or subtle behaviors that we are making because of internal sort of mental economic decisions that we're making. And it enumerates, or it sort of pinpoints, specific examples of these behavioral economic phenomena that then lead to a healthcare organization that is recalcitrant to change. Okay, so one, you've heard this before, people naturally have loss avoidance, that the thrill of victory is not enough to overcome the agony of defeat. The agony of defeat typically wins out. Most people behave in a way that minimizes loss. They want to avoid loss or failure as much as possible. Therefore, they don't want to change. Okay, next up. Interestingly, they point out a need for immediacy when it comes to results. In other words, if the change is going to take a long time to play out, it's called discounted present value. What they do is they tremendously discount the value. They essentially over-discount the present value of that future change. And they give it a fancy name. They call it hyperbolic discounting. And so the point is that unless it has any sort of immediate sort of economic or some other progress within the organization, they're probably not going to do it. If it's long term, people are biased against doing long-term things because of this phenomena they call hyperbolic discounting. Okay, C. Those at the top within healthcare organizations, hospitals, health insurance company, healthcare parts of the government, employee benefits, financial decision makers within companies, etc., those at the top have avoided failure. In other words, to a certain extent, now this is probably going to rub some people the wrong way. I in no way mean to offend anybody, but in many ways, those who have gotten to the top are those who have failed the least. They have gotten there not necessarily because of their quote-unquote success, but rather because of their lack of failure. They're really good at avoiding or not getting around or getting involved in things that blow up and don't work. So guess what? They call that experience waiting. These people in executive positions say, okay, well, I was able to get to this position by avoiding failure. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm going to keep on with that failure avoidance behavior that got me here going forward. Okay. Now, the Health Affairs article goes on to more examples. In fact, there's like 6 in total. This is just half of them. Okay, but I wanted to highlight, again, it's social, it's behavioral, it's about the people. Okay, next up, we're not just going to talk about problems here on AHealthcareZ, we're going to talk about solutions. And of course, who do you go to for solutions? None other than the McKinsey consulting firm, of course. So this is according to an article from McKinsey. I think it's got some great ideas in it. Solutions for speed. All organizations want to be faster, or so they say. And McKinsey's like, look, if you want to go faster, here's what we've seen effectively allow organizations to go faster. Like, you can do it. This is how. So they say, A, you need to spread authority. It is not command and control. It is decentralized authority. And by authority, it means you can make decisions, and it also means you give them money. It means you have more dispersed control of decisions and money. It's not centralized. Hey, I can tell you that I've worked at a hospital. I've worked with a lot of people who've worked in the insurance industry. I've worked with a lot of people that work in government, and I've worked with a lot of employers. And typically these large organizations have highly centralized control structures. Okay, next up. So fine, you can't have that centralized control. You got to spread out the authority. Next up, it says that it needs an entrepreneurial mindset. And I'm like, okay, well, what in the world does that mean? I mean, entrepreneur, does that mean they're setting up a lemonade stand? Like, what does entrepreneur mean? Interestingly, they define it. They say it means that failure is encouraged. I saw a fascinating video of a gentleman who's an entrepreneur, what have you, but he was sitting at a fancy dinner next to Elon Musk a long time ago. And he said to Elon Musk, he asked him a question. He said, what's your secret? And Elon Musk's answer was, I'm never afraid to fail. And I will tell you, in my entrepreneurial experience, that has been the key as well. Like, entrepreneurs aren't like these like crazy smart people. That, you know, it's just the classic Thomas Edison thing of finding 99 ways not to make a filament for a light bulb, and then finally you failed so many times, eventually you figure it out. Like, that's how it works. And so, if you have these large organizations that don't encourage failure, by definition, that does not encourage entrepreneurial behavior. Entrepreneurial behavior means supporting and encouraging failure. In fact, I remember Jeff Bezos said this about Amazon. He's like, look, at Amazon, we need to fail a lot because if we're failing, that means we're learning. So to a certain extent, if you say that your organization doesn't fail a lot, what you're really saying is that your organization doesn't learn a lot. So you got to have an entrepreneurial mindset, meaning failure is encouraged. Okay, next up, C, the leaders have to lead by examples. Guess what? You got to go out and you got to fail. I mean, Elon Musk blew up rockets. I mean, Jeff Bezos stood up there with his Amazon Fire phone. It's like, this thing's going to be awesome. It was a total flop, okay? So the point is that the leaders stick their necks out there and they're like, this is going to be fantastic. And guess what? They're totally going to get mud on their face. And the other employees need to see that. They need to see the leaders getting out there and getting punched in the nose. So unless the leaders are out there getting punched in the nose, then do you expect the employees to go around out there and getting their nose punched in? No way. So you got to lead by example. This is not rocket scientists. All of you know this. Okay, next up, you need to communicate with stories, right? So in order to change, it requires a lot of persuasion. Persuasion is not done through statistics. Persuasion is done through stories. So just know it's not done through a new mission statement. If you go out there and have some, and they specifically cite this, do not go out there with a new mission statement because everyone's going to be like, okay, right? It's got to be through stories. Okay, next up, how do things happen within organizations? They happen with meetings. They say that the meetings within organizations need to change. Here's how they need to change. 3 ways. They need to be small, not that many people. 2, they need to be short, not that long. 3, they need to be virtual. They say do not get on a plane and go somewhere unless you absolutely have to. Why? Because big meetings with lots of people waste a lot of people's time. Long meetings waste a lot of people's time. Travel wastes a lot of people's time. So what's the key here? To speed, like by definition, what is speed? Not wasting time. What's a great way to not waste time? By having small, short, virtual meetings. A very concrete thing you can do. Okay, finally, I want to tell you an example of a healthcare organization that is really the personification of solutions for speed, and that is Nomi Health. And Nomi Health, digital health startup, started in 2019, only less than 3 short years ago. And they provide not only like pop-up super fast COVID testing, but also COVID surveillance, also COVID treatments. They are a direct care organization that literally did not exist 3 years ago. And they have the major COVID programs for 5 state governments. Huge states. Like, I guarantee you there are very large organizations that wish they could have the contracts with these states that Nomi has. But those big organizations didn't get them. Why? Because Nomi was faster. Okay, next up. They also do it at airports. They also do all this COVID testing at airports. They do it at massive numbers of schools. They do it for cruise ships. In fact, Nomi does 4% of all COVID testing in all of America. One, for a company that's only been around for less than 3 years. 1 in every 25 COVID tests is a Nomi COVID test. It came out of nowhere because they had all these characteristics of speed. Now, they got over 50 sites, like super fast. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, you say, these things take time. No, these things don't take time. You can be fast because failure was encouraged, because they spread out authority, because they led by example, because they had short virtual meetings, because they communicated. I mean, listen, they followed like the playbook, like intuitively. Like they obviously didn't see this whiteboard, but they knew how to do things fast. It can be done, but here's why Nomi could do it. Because they were new. It is super hard to change established relationships. If you have a new organization, you don't have established relationships, okay? So it kind of gets me back to this verse from the Bible. Like some of you have read this book. It doesn't really matter what religion you have. But in the Bible it says, yo, you can't put new wine into old wine skins. And it specifically said why you can't do that. Why? Because it will make the wine skins burst. Why will the wineskins burst? Because they're not flexible, because they're rigid, because they won't change. So, you can't put new wine into old wineskins. You gotta put it into new wineskins, into a new organization. So, don't worry, there's hope out there for all you large organizations. You can carve out, and you need to create its own little bubble of newness within your organization, which is why at the end of the day, like venture and startups, at the end of the day, like that advantage of speed, like I'll take speed over money any day of the week. Like it is so awesome to be fast. Frankly, it's a lot of fun. And dude, at Compass we failed constantly, but we learned and we succeeded. Likewise does Nomi. And so just know that there are absolutely folks out there within health. Oh, and I'll just add, I didn't even put it up here. They only had a Series A. They only had 1 round of financing. They're not one of these companies that needs gobs and gobs of money. Like they're already growing and hugely successful, and they only had a Series A. They only had 1 round of funding. So, listen, you've got a rubric you can follow it here. You can do this within your organization. It's about the people, and you too can change. Thank you for watching AHealthcareZ.